All right, thank you so much for creating time for us. In case you're just joining us, my name is Safina Chenguma. It's always a pleasure to be doing this for you each and every Tuesday. Daybreak it is. Karibu sana to the program. And we appreciate all of you who woke up with us when we started the show till now. We appreciate your time and company. So today, we are taking a little break on the social hour because we have something very pertinent that we want to discuss and highlight. And this will take us into a sector that has been unrecognized for so long, yet it is so important when it comes to the societal growth and the economic growth. And we will be talking about the care of our entire community. And as we have this conversation, we are sitting down at a time when the entire world is marking the second International Day of Care and Support. Actually, it's a very new concept that was founded to be very pivotal, considering the level of significance that this whole sector has in our whole society. But yet, when it comes to it being recognized, when it comes to putting the money where the action is, there is a lot that we will discover needs to be done. And also looking at how the rights of women have been, sort of like neglected when it comes to what they do in the care sector. I'll be having a panel of two. Actually, they're already in studio with me this morning to have this very important conversation, also to look at what Kenya is planning to do as we join the rest of the world in marking the UN International Day of Care and Support. And with me in studio, sitting on my far right, I'm having Plandina Bobson. She's the director at Oxfam Kenya. We appreciate your time. Karibu sana. And of course, we have with us this morning Florence Mashio. She is the director of Research and Data Department in the Office of the Women Rights Advisor. Thank you so much for creating time for us this morning as well. All right, so we are having this conversation at a very pivotal time, and when I was doing the introduction, I mentioned this is the second observance of such a great day. Probably to be prudent to begin with just explaining to us in basic what the International Day of Care and Support is all about, and what is the genesis? Why was it important for the whole world to actually begin to look at the care sector differently? Let me begin with you. I'll get a cocktail of both your inputs on this one.
Thank you. The reason why this day was instituted is because care work is such an important aspect in our lives. We say it is the backbone of our economy. Without care work, our economies will literally collapse. I believe we are all here today because we have carers in our homes that are taking care of things that we are not able to take care of when we are doing paid care work. And that's what it means for everyone. That if these carers decide today they're not doing their work, we all wouldn't be able to go to work. Our economies will come to a standstill. It also contributes significantly to the well-being of our society because we have people who have devoted their lives to ensuring that, our children are well taken care of, the elderly, the sick, people in our homes are fed, our homes are clean, and we're living in, good conditions. Mm-hmm. That is the work that they do. So they contribute significantly to the well-being of our societies. Unfortunately, for the longest time, this is a sector that has gone unrecognized. It remains invisible just because of the perceptions that we uphold as humans that care work is, a given, that women should be doing this. It is not skilled work. It is not important work. And so it wasn't recognized. It contributes to the economy, but it is highly, in many countries, you don't see it actually quantified or, numbers indicating that this is the amount of money, or in terms of the numbers, how much it has contributed to the GDP of the economy. So many countries don't account for care work in their economies. Mm-hmm. So this day was, I would say, the first initial step to a global recognition of how important care work is. Mm-hmm.
Indeed. And for you, just to look at, and I'll bring it closer home, in the context of our country, when it comes to how we have looked at care work, why is this day important?
Several things, and maybe I could just still go back to history, why globally we are where we are today. We all know about the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. It is the first one that we started having the conversation around measuring care work and the value of care work. Moving forward, because I come from a background of research, we, in the 19th International Conference of Labor and Statisticians in 2013, it was agreed that there are categories that have been failed to be measured within the statistical framework. And so there was a feeling that we need to engage with the economy and the labor market, because initially we used to just measure individuals who are looked at employed, unemployed, inactive. And part of unemployed and inactive constituted a lot of care work. Moving forward to 2023, then the UN General Assembly, in last year during the UN General Assembly, there's a groundbreaking resolution that was brought forward in July that established the observance of this day. And as an office, we took it because it was one of the things that the president, within the Women's Charter, declared that in his presidency, he will recognize care work as something that contributes to the economy. And that being the case, excuse me, last year we did the Office of the Women's Rights Advisor hosted the first international observance for this. And we brought together stakeholders, Ministry of Labor, civil society, Treasury, through the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, to give us an analysis of the first time use survey that has been done within sub-Saharan Africa that shows us what actually, how we spend time, both men and women, in terms of care work. And that was really groundbreaking for our country, because then now we can measure this care work. We can actually have facts to say that this is what care work is, this is how much time you and I spend on care work, and now we are moving over to saying, okay, so how much is this care work contributing to the economy?
Great, it's good you've said that, because that National Time Use Survey and the national care policy that we have has made Kenya actually to be ranked among the countries that are celebrated for making efforts in just improving this whole sector of care work and looking at it in a different way. So I would say we are beginning from an optimistic or a very positive ground.
True, you're not wrong. I mean, Kenyans, there's something we can be positive about.
We still have a long way to go, but we are starting from somewhere.
And many people, many countries, I can attest, are learning from us. We've hosted a session at the United General Assembly last year around care work. And we hosted with the government of Canada and Mexico in New York. And they really were learning from us using the time use survey and the fact that we were working on a policy that is in the process of finalization, so that A, we will have the data, and B, we will have a policy that speaks to it. And then the rest is just building it up for us to get to understand what care work is and to infuse care work within our workplaces. I'm hoping that RMS will have a care center so that when you come with your child, you can place your child somewhere and still continue to work and contribute to what this company does.
Which brings me to the next point of this conversation. And I'll come back to you because you come from that background of data and research to give us the numbers of the discrepancies when it comes to the men and the women, when it comes to care work. But generally, let's just look at it, how the world looks at care work, that care work is equivalent to women's work. Why is this perspective so common, that you equate care work to be care and women equal, like it's a woman's job? Why do you think we are sort of like borrowed and believed this kind of a concept?
It all comes down to how we are socialized. It comes back to our cultural beliefs, you know, the different communities that we come from, which is like a common factor in all these communities, that as a child, when you are born and you're a girl, you're raised up to learn to do household chores. And, you know, it's those subtle comments that the parents make, you know, like, if you don't know how to cook, you will not get a husband. You know, you have to know how to wash clothes. While the boys are playing, the girls are literally being trained on how to perform care work. And we are socialized in a way that we believe that for women, marriage and family is the ultimate goal, that women don't have any other ambition out of motherhood, out of, you know, being wives and out of taking care of people. And that is the only thing that they're trained as you grow up to work towards to. And so this then, you get into even when you go to school, that is why you find that a lot of women are leaning towards, you know, more care-related professions, nurses, teachers, you know, that are related to care, because that is what has been instilled in us from the time when we are born. It's also is dependent on the opportunities that are made available to girls when they're growing up, you know. Parents make decisions between a boy and a girl. They prioritize that the girl can access education. I mean, the boy can access education and the girl is left at home. When resources are stringent, it is the boys that are prioritized, which leaves the girls to take care of, you know, the household duties and everything. So access to education contributes significantly to this. If you're not well educated, chances are you will not get employed. You'll just end up then doing, you know, jobs that are available. It's also how we perceive, you know, significant sectors like paid domestic work, which for us, for example, in Kenya, we see it as the job that is easily accessible to people who are poor, to people who, you know, don't have education. You know, we don't value it. And that is why there's always a struggle between employers paying the domestic workers a minimum wage, because, you know, people would ask, if she's living in my house, she's eating my food, you know, I'm providing everything, why should I pay her the minimum wage? Exactly.
That's the concept. And a majority of those in domestic work are actually women.
Exactly. A majority of them are. But when you go into the paid industry, like the hotel sector, the chefs are actually men and they get paid for it. But we can't translate the same into our own households because we believe this is something that women should be doing. So the biggest barrier actually to even achieving these policies, to investing in data that tells us where people spend most of their time, is the perception that we have on care work. We have such negative perception and, you know, retrogressive perception that continue to inhibit any progress we want to make towards, you know, recognizing care work. Even now, as we speak about the policies, Oxfam started working on care work in 2014. Tell me why it had to take us more than, you know, 8 years to actually get to that place where now we have a national, you know, time use survey. It's because of the perceptions. When you bring these conversations into the boardroom, the questions are like, why are we talking about washing dishes in the boardroom? People don't see the importance of it. So we have policies now in place. We're on a good trajectory. But the biggest barrier towards realizing even the implementation of these policies would be our own perceptions and social norms that we uphold on care work. Because the same people that we're expecting to implement these policies still have that mindset that care work is not important. So we have a lot of work to do.
Care work is not work. And I know somebody, just because you've said that, somebody is already asking, so you want to be paid for taking care of your children, for breastfeeding them, for cooking for your family, for washing clothes. So you want to be paid for being women. Anyway, by the end of this conversation, we'll understand why it is actually important for the Globe to escalate this conversation about care work. There is paid care work, which unfortunately is underpaid. Yes. And then there is the unpaid care work, which is like the majority of the care work that we're even talking about. So I want you to take us deep into the numbers.
Yes, that's why I'm looking at this gadget. First of all, the numbers tell us fact. Women spend more time on unpaid care work than men. If we were in a class, I would show you how a man spends his day. And maybe somebody at home, ask yourself, when you woke up in the morning, what did you do? As a man, what did you do? Did you find breakfast ready? Did you take care of the kids? Right now they have clothes, but if they were going to school, would you naturally be the one doing that? Or is your wife doing that? All those things, those are called unpaid care work that ideally sometimes would employ somebody to do it and then would pay for it. But when you are doing it for your children, it's called unpaid, but it's still work. So that's the idea, that it is still work. So what are the numbers telling us? Blandina has just talked about the many years that Oxfam has worked around care work. And in 2019, Oxfam came up with a report that emphasized that Kenyan women in rural areas spend up to 12 hours a day on unpaid care work. That means they go to fetch water, they go to the farm, they're not paid for it. They take care of the children, and they hardly have time for self-care. Self-care is even going to just sit down and rest. That is self-care. Self-care is taking time to go to social media. That is self-care. And so if you look at what time men spend on the phone, watching football and the TV, I mean, it's a lot. But tell me the day you just had time, instead of taking care of the children, you are actually watching football. Or probably, you know, Kipchoge was running and you really wanted to watch from start to finish, but you couldn't. You were busy doing unpaid care work. And so that was the statistic then. And in 2020, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and UN Women report showed that women in Kenya spend an average of 11.1 hours per day on unpaid care work. Now look at that plus what you're doing. how many hours have you worked in a day? If you look at 11.1 hours in a day on unpaid care work, plus your normal paid care work that Citizen pays you to do. Now, if you look at the Time Use survey that was done in 2021 and was released last year, the data also is not lying. It's still, complementing what was done in 2019 and 2020. Statistics show that from the survey that Kenyan women spend 4 to 5 hours per day on average on unpaid care work compared to about 1 hour by men. 1 hour. In fact, it was about 1 hour. So it is not 1 hour. It's 55 minutes. So we just rounded off to the nearest. If all forms of work, whether paid or unpaid, are added up, Kenyan women work on average of 1.16 times more than men, or 7 to 8 hours per day compared to men's 6 hours. So nationally, the proportion total time that girls aged between 15 and 17, these are children who are in Form 1 to Form 3, years spent on unpaid care work is 3 times as much as that of boys in the same age group. So even when you look at school-going children, for example, we have floods or we have drought, and in certain regions, girls will be told to stay home to help their mothers go look for firewood while the boys will go to school. And so they are spending more time out of school than in school simply because they are girls. Then if you look at county to county, just this is the last statistic I'm sharing so that we can look at comparisons. Women in Wajir, for example, spend 26.8% on unpaid care work. When you look at Marsabit County has the highest unpaid time spent by women on unpaid care work, and they spend about 7 hours a day on unpaid care work. If you look closely, you will find it's a matter of they're going to look for water and they're walking long distances. So the county government then would need then to use these statistics to say, what are the needs of our women? And that's why we talk about in the Office of the Women's Rights Advisor that data should inform development. And so when we're looking at empowering women even at that level in Marsabit County, the county government now should be looking at if our women are spending 7 hours a day on just looking for water. Bring the water. Why don't we invest more instead of building that road? Let me bring water close to the women. So this is why we're looking at data informing how we invest so that women's rights are actually actualized.
Yes. That's why I wanted you to take us through the numbers, because when you're talking about care work, we needed to quantify or look at even some numbers that show us the discrepancies between this. But then, having said that, and even compared what hours men spend vis-a-vis what women spend, on care work, why is that important? Because I know there are some risks. There's a lot that women are exposed to by just being, in that kind of a space. So what is the consequence? What is the impact of this on women and their rights and their growth and their empowerment? Let's connect the numbers with what is actually happening on the ground.
The impact of this, or in Oxfam, we believe that unpaid and underpaid care work perpetuate, inequalities. They limit women from accessing opportunities, be it education opportunities and training. And then women are then caught up in this endless cycle of poverty. Because if you cannot access education, if you cannot access, paid employment, for instance, because you're just in the house, and even in that house, you're not being recognized for the work that you're doing, you end up being caught in this cycle where, you give birth to children end up being in the same cycle. If you were a domestic worker, they don't have good access to education, they probably end up being domestic workers. So it's a significant contribution actually to the poverty that women experience. And for the longest, civil society organizations have been working on, different initiatives towards women economic empowerment, facilitating access to credit, training women on saving and everything. But this woman that is being trained on all these things literally doesn't even have the time to invest this money in, other opportunities that can bring in the income, because she has so much. If you're doing unpaid care and domestic work for 11 hours in a day, the day has only 24 hours. What time do you actually have to engage in other activities that bring in income? And it's not about also focusing so much on the income, is that women also They're those people who love being stay-at-home moms. They're people that is their passion, to just be at home and take care of their families. We need to get to that environment where women are not making choices of being stay-at-home moms or, you know, taking up paid work because they don't have the capacity to do both, but a place where if I decide to be a stay-at-home mom, I'm doing that because I love being a stay-at-home mom and I love taking care of children, and that is what I want as an ambition for myself. And if I decide to pursue career, I'm pursuing it not because I cannot afford to have children, but because I just don't feel as a woman that family is my thing. I just want to pursue, you know, career. I want to, you know, do brilliant things on the other side, but not on the family front. And those who want to pursue both have an environment that they can do both, that you have an enabling environment where you have a domestic worker in your home that you're able to pay well and is supporting you in taking care of your children. And at the workplace, you don't have to worry that if I get pregnant, I'll get fired, because the employer thinks this is a loss for my company. You know, you're getting pregnant, you need to go on maternity leave, I need to hire someone to cover for your role. And so women are scared to even get pregnant because you know that is literally a threat to your income and your family is depending on you. So people are having to make choices between family and, you know, paid work. You know, you get married. Because
it seems like you can't have both.
You can't have both. The environment is not enabling for that. And then from the men's perspective, this perception that, you know, when you marry and you have a wife, this wife is literally supposed to be the person who does everything in the house. This context does not allow for that, unfortunately. Like, the context has completely changed. Most households can't survive on one income. You need the woman also to contribute. You know, unless you're very rich, you're a billionaire and you can provide everything and she can sit in the house and do all these things, that's different. But we all know how many billionaires do we have. We are not billionaires. So everyone needs to contribute. And for the woman to be able to contribute, you know, financially, she needs support on the other areas as well. You know, if she's at work and the child, maybe there's a school meeting that needs to happen, and the husband or the spouse can literally take a break and go for this school meeting. That is literally what we are asking for, that we redistribute these household chores, this care work, even at the household level, and we bring up our children in a way that boys know if they get into the house and there are dishes that need to be washed, they can also wash the dishes. This is not something that only girls can do.
Only girls can do.
This way, then, we are able to enable that both boys and girls, men and women, have equal access to different opportunities, and, you know, they're able to thrive.
Actually, today I told my boys, because I don't have a paid care worker, I told my boys, I woke up, I cooked, I came in late, I cooked, they ate. I woke up, there were dishes in the sink. I told them, from today I'm not cooking. We just have to have an agreement that if I cook, you clean.
Everybody has clean.
Yes. So this, I left the house today telling them that I am no longer cooking in this house.
We have to go back to the
but going back to the impact of unpaid care work, the impact it has on women, issues to do with health and mental well-being of women, issues to access to levels of leadership. You know, we are talking about two-thirds gender rule and women, you know, participating in the political space. And most of them will tell you, my children are still young, I can't run for office. But no man will ever tell you, I can't run for office because my children are still young. So again, unpaid care work still draws you back as a woman from taking up positions that should, you know, you are equipped to take care of them. She'd already talked about lost opportunities in terms of education, but also I'm looking at women and girls face, you know, increased financial security because of unpaid care work. And then if we look at matters climate change, this is the direction the globe is going. When you have drought, when you have food insecurity, when you have conflicts, the people who suffer most are women, and because the men would go out and do those other things, but women will have to stay at home and care for the children, and the elderly. When you know, we were joking, I think, about, you know, when your mother-in-law is sick, it is you. And if you don't show up, there's a problem. You're not a good wife. So all those things, unfortunately, perception-wise, we have relegated them to women. And I think, Blanina, you and I, now when we are raising our children, boys and girls, we are saying there's no work that is simply women. Because there's work that is biological for me to breastfeed a child, to give birth, to carry a pregnancy, that cannot be, you know, delegated. But eating, cooking. I mean, my mother used to say, when you can eat, you can also cook. So it doesn't come with gender.
Yeah, but then I'm just curious, because both of you have been in this space, you know, longer than even when the world found it important to begin having this conversation. What are the complexities of bringing this agenda on the table? You know the kind of society that we come from, yeah? Even taking this to the level of the boardrooms and even trying to make sure that the decision makers, the who is who in this country who decides on which direction we go, actually look at it with the significance that both and the passion that both of you have. How hard has it been? Because I'm just trying to imagine you talking about, you know, washing dishes and like, how has it been, and how are we doing? Is it getting better? Is the message slowly sinking, or we still have a long way to go? Let me start.
The fact that we have the first ever national time use survey, the fact that we have a draft national care policy, the fact that the National Treasury is now, you know, working on a household satellite account to, you know, be able to quantify how much care work contributes to the economy. I think we have made significant progress from the policy front. At the community level, the biggest barrier has always been perceptions, and from experience, from the counties that we are working in, we can see progress. We actually have couples sessions where we bring couples together and sit them and have conversations with them about care work. I attended one in Kawangware the other day, and the men were like, but why, you know, should I be cooking when my wife can be doing that? You know, my role as a husband is to bring income into the family. You know, I'm the provider. That is what is written in the Bible. So those are the complexities where you're bringing up
changing.
Yes. You're bringing an agenda into a space of people that are deeply religious, deeply cultural, you know, deeply influenced by their own, you know, upbringing in their own households, and changing that text forever. And maybe that is why it took us all these years to actually get to a point where now we have, you know, policies. It's because it's a mindset thing first before we even get to actualization or, you know, doing the tangible things that need to be done. We're bringing on board religious leaders because they're also the biggest influencers, you know. When women are beaten in their houses for not preparing food or for coming home late and then they don't cook food, they run to the religious leaders to complain. And the religious leaders tell them, I don't know, you need to be like a Proverbs. Is it Proverbs
31?
Yeah, you know, woman.
What they forget is the Proverbs 31 woman was actually supported by the man. And
that part is usually left out, you know. You need to be like a Proverbs 31 woman, and then you're told to pray and forgive your husband. But that is not how you handle conflict as a result. Why couldn't the husband at least even start cooking when this woman was late? I mean, she was late, obviously, for a good reason. She knows she has children to take care of. But it's bringing conflict in households, and when they go for conflict resolution, they're sent back to their own homes and told, pray. You know, we're not really addressing what the root cause of this is. We have cultures where and the strangest thing is that it's not just men who are actually the barrier. There are women, we've done researches, and there are women who would tell you the man is not supposed to be seen in the kitchen. Culturally, it's unacceptable. I do not want to see my husband near the kitchen. That is my office. He needs to sit, I will cook and do everything. So we are fighting this battle where you're fighting for the women, but the same women are also a barrier because they literally have grown up knowing that this is their role and this is what they continue doing. So it's like we're bringing in such a foreign agenda and for their own benefit, but they don't see the benefit of it. So it's battling cultural beliefs, battling religious beliefs, and now battling lack of investments at, you know, government level towards infrastructure that can reduce unpaid care and domestic work, or can redistribute unpaid care and domestic work. Simple investments like schools. When a woman has a school closer to her door, it means she can take her child to that school and focus on other things. When there's a health facility close that is well equipped, you know, with, you know, nurses and drugs, it means if I have a sick child, I have somewhere where I can take my child and the recovery time will be short and I'll spend this other time doing other things. If I have water accessible, you know, I don't have to spend 6 hours to go and fetch water. It means I have, you know, so much time to invest in other things. So we're calling on like the government and other stakeholders to invest resources in care infrastructure that indirectly contribute or directly contributes to the reduction of, you know, time that women spend on care work, and also contributes significantly to the redistribution. The private sector, just having maternity policies, that a woman knows, if I get pregnant today, for 3 months I'll go on maternity leave, I'll come back and I'll still find, I'll be employed. I will not lose my job. That is the security that women need. That you have a creche or a childcare center, that in those moments where I don't have someone to leave my child with at home, I can come with my child to the office and leave it there with the carer and focus on, you know, the work that I'm supposed to do at the organization or at the company. So such investments need to be done. She talked about, you know, the impact of climate change. We saw the other day the floods in Nairobi, houses washed, you know. But who usually is stuck with the children in those moments, trying to figure out, exactly, find food for your children, find shelter? It's the women. It's very hard for them to invest in anything else if we don't create that enabling environment.
I'm also keen to understand how the men have been brought on board in this conversation. In as much as we say women are mostly affected, we cannot get anywhere if we do not address this from both genders and having both of them sit on the table. You know, what is it that you have tried, or that, you know, just sort of like to bring the men on board in this conversation, in as much as it is the women who seem to be like they are mostly affected?
I think the leadership by His Excellency the President to recognize care work is one thing, because if he had not said it, it would be one of those things that even within government, people are like, this is an activism thing, it's a women's thing.
It shouldn't be a woman's agenda.
So because the President recognized it in the Women's Charter, and part of the role of the Office of the Women's Rights Advisor is to advocate within government matters to do what was provided for in the Women's Charter. That's why he went a step ahead, and last year he also said Kenya is going to ratify C-189 and 190, which affects the domestic work that we export as a country. Because while we as a country get value from exporting domestic work in the Gulf areas and all that, we realize also that women are violated within that space. And so C-189 and 190, we're in the process, the Ministry of Social Labor is working on it to ratify. We have pushed for ratification of also C-181, which regulates the agencies that work. So you see, is it by force or fire? By force, by fire. Men have no choice, even within the government system, to work and ensure that even the care work that we export, the paid care work that we export, the women are safe, they're taken care of, and also the agencies that do recruit these women are also regulated, so that when there is a violation, then we hold these agencies to account. So when this 189, 190, 181 go through the process that they need to go through, then we get to a place where, as a country, we have safeguarded the paid care work, even whether it is internal or external. Because again, you've had young girls who are working in household being violated sexually by their employers. And so this ratification of these three resolutions will help us as a nation to then have proper internal regulations within the country that you have no choice but to follow. Yes. Again, how have we brought men on board? Every time we go to county visits, we've pushed for public participation of women. If you hold public participation in the morning, for example, most women in the rural areas are doing domestic chores, and therefore they're not available to say, if you decide we are building a road, what do you think? The women need to be there and tell you, we actually don't need a road, we need lights on this road. So if you're not having women in public participation and creating a time that makes sense for the women, then you're missing out on the women. So that's how we've been able to engage. And every time we're going to counties, even with partners, we are making we are sharing the statistics of each county. Like Marsabit County, this is what the Time You Survey is saying, and this is what it means, and this is what we can do for the women. And even engaging with county assembly. Early this year, it was in September this year, actually, last month, we had the Women in Data Summit, and we really focused on care work and the gaps and the data and what it's showing us. And we were engaging with county governments at that summit to show them this is what it means, and this is what it means for what you need to do in terms of investment for women at the county level. So we are using data to speak into the men to understand, because it's not an emotional thing. This is what the data is saying. This is what it means. If you do this, this is what it brings.
Yeah, I like that. It's not an emotional thing. Speak with facts on the table. Yeah?
But also there's a strategy that we are applying. I think for the longest we also made the same mistake where we were just discussing these issues with the women and not realizing that when these women go back to their households, the men actually hold the power of whether they can allow them to engage in certain activities or not. So now we've adopted a male engagement strategy, which means we're bringing the men on the same level for them to understand. She talked about the impact that care work has on women, their health, access to opportunities and all this. So we are having discussions with them and telling them this is what it means. When you let your woman or your child, perform all this care work, this is how it is impacting on their life. But when you support, this is what it means to her. She has more time to engage in other activities. Even your family is more happier. And we've done a research on that. When men contribute to taking care of their children at the household, the family is more happier. Like the marriages are more successful. So we are bringing them into that space where we're trying to understand where they're coming from, recognizing and acknowledging that they've been socialized in a certain way, that we have all these, cultural beliefs that are deeply entrenched in us, and to abandon those is going to take some time. So having conversations and starting to change their mindsets. We now have male champions at the community level who now advocate for other men to support, their families, to support their spouses. So slowly, steadily, I think we'll get to that place where when people start seeing examples from different households, they can actually emulate. The other challenge for men...
And it's not demeaning for a man.
It is not
demeaning. The work of, there's this perception that if you see a man doing, the things that women are perceived to be doing, then it's demeaning. What kind of a man are you? And even it's other men who will criticize this person, or even women will criticize this person. And
that is a significant barrier. They've mentioned it. They've said it is a barrier for them to support. Those who are willing to support. The men who have said, I'm very willing to wash clothes. I'm very willing to, support my house in doing some of the chores, as long as I'm not doing outside for people to see me. Because when they're outside of their houses, people laugh at them. But now, how many people have those settings that, they can wash within the confinements of their houses? That's what we are saying. There also needs to be an investment in the infrastructure, for it to create an environment where also men feel comfortable to support. There are men who say...
I'm not thinking hiding is even the solution. There's nothing embarrassing about washing clothes.
No. But it takes time, because for them it's like a beating on their ego.
Who wants to wash dirty clothes? Who wants to wear dirty clothes?
They don't want to wear them. They're willing to help, but the environment they're saying is not enabling. They're being laughed at by men, they're being laughed at by their peers and by women. So they're like, I'm happy to do it, but inside in my house. The woman can go and hang the clothes outside. I don't want to be seen doing that.
Anyway, whichever method you're using as a couple, bottom idea.
Exactly.
Even if they are hiding when they are washing. Anyway, there's something interesting that I want us to talk about before we wind up. There's a partnership that you have, Oxfam and the Women Rights Advisor, the Office of the Women Rights Advisor. This is the second time we are commemorating the International Day of Care and Support. I want us to just talk about what's coming up, what's happening, how are we commemorating it, what's on the table for Kenya, for people just to know what is our place, in this second commemoration. I'll start with you.
All right. So what we did last year, of course, was to ensure that Kenya National Bureau of Statistics launches the Time Use Survey for it to be publicly accessible, which we've done. State Department of Gender is finalizing on the care policy. And then we are working with Treasury to ensure that we have the system of national accounts available, hopefully. And we're putting our fingers crossed that next year when your GDP is counted, care work is also, and paid care work is also counted. Today, what are we doing to commemorate? We, together with Data 2X, we partnered with Nairobi University to do a research on how different government agencies have utilized the Time Use Survey. And so the results of that research is what we're launching today.
All right.
we are also going to have a discussion on what is the formula that Treasury is going to use to calculate unpaid care work. Now we have the data, but what are they actually going to use because it's a system that Treasury has to use, and what is the acceptable system. We're coming together with different government agencies, and Oxfam is as a CSO and a partner that has really worked in the unpaid care work area to bring our minds together and say, what next? Because we don't like to do a so what commemoration. We know where we are at as a country, but we need to push the needle to get us to the GDP, where every time, even when a woman, sometimes a woman goes through divorce, and even calculating because she was a stay-at-home mom, it seems she never contributed. Now, once we start calculating the cost of unpaid care work, it will be easy for us to see her contribution and it will be factual, without her saying, I used to wash my husband's clothes, take care of the children, keep the house safe, make sure the environment is good for him to do all those mega businesses. Sometimes they calculate only on whether your name is on the title deed or not. But this will help women actually, in terms of matrimonial property and all that, get us to a place where women are not devalued because they chose to stay home and take care of their children. So today's commemoration is discussing all those things and helping us see where do we go from here and how do we move the needle for us. And hopefully next year, Blandina, we will be celebrating. It is in the GDP finally.
So let's look for something. Let's move forward.
Yeah.
But then you're blessed if your partner chooses to stay home and take care of the children so that you can go out there and conquer. Because the pressure that comes with lack of somebody at home to take care of the child.
Yes.
It would actually even limit your performance at work. So you need to celebrate that woman if she has decided that you go conquer the world and you're here taking care of the kids. I mean, don't ask her what have you been doing all day. But then, Blandina, I know you have something to add on what we should be expecting today.
Yeah, so it's to celebrate care workers, both majority are women, but we acknowledge that there are men who also perform care work, and today is the day that we celebrate, that they contribute to our economies, that they contribute to our well-being, and this is the day where we recognize that. It is also a day where we celebrate, the achievements we have made this fight. It hasn't been easy. It takes a lot of push and pull, to get some of these policies and everything, and the successes even at the grassroots level. So we are taking this day to celebrate, but more importantly, also to kind of reflect on the journey that we have ahead of us, We still have she talked about the ILO Convention, C-189. This is for decent work for domestic workers. There was a directive from the president in the last Labor Day that it needs to be ratified. We still don't have it ratified. What this means is that every time, domestic workers go overseas to perform domestic work and they're violated, we cannot even support them. We cannot, provide or kind of advocate for their rights. There's ILO Convention C-190 that is on safe workplaces, for all. That is also something that needs to be ratified because domestic workers suffer in the private homes of employers. I cannot go to someone's house and say, or start asking questions on how they're treating their employee because this is a private space, but in real sense, they're actually suffering. And we need to have those instruments that can enable us to hold them to account. It's also a day where we continue, educating the public on the importance of recognizing care work, on the importance of sharing, care work at the household level between the family members, a day where we also, shift the narratives and perceptions that we have towards care work. This is not work that is meant for women only. This is work for all. It is important work that all of us need to engage in. So there's a lot of content that is going to go out on social media just to educate the masses on why it is important, for them to recognize care work. It is also a day where we continue pushing for gender responsive budgeting, both at the national and at the county level. The recent political protests we had related to the finance bill, if you look at some of the budget cuts, they were on health, they were on social protection. This has a direct impact on care work. It has a direct impact on women. So continuously at the county level, we mobilize and organize women to go to those public participation and, present their priorities. And we ask for the same at the national level, that we need to have significant investments in health, in education, in water, in social protection, because these have a direct impact on the lives that women lead.
Thank you so much.
Maybe just one line.
Final one.
Yeah.
Let's start with you.
The fact that the president government put this office there, the Women's Rights Advisors Office. While we are not implementers, we are able to coordinate. We have the power to coordinate women's rights across sectors and across ministries. What that does, the things that Blandina is talking about, last year we were able to flag the Ministry of Labour around the ratification, and now we see the wheels moving. And we see, of course, the State Department of Gender doing its work. The policy is moving. And so I keep on telling women, this office is there for you. And we keep on saying that our boss, Honorable Harriet Chiga, is the police for women within government. Because some of these things that affect women, if we don't spotlight them, and we have the Women In series where we're looking at what is, in this area, what is ailing women, and who needs to do what to make it work for women. And so there is an office somewhere here in the government that is looking out for you as a woman.
All right, thank you so much. Your final word?
My final word is that we all have a role to play. You have your own role as an individual at your household level to start recognizing care work and supporting the redistribution and supporting the reduction of time that, your people spend on care work. Private sector have a role to play, in terms of instituting policies that recognize care work as valued work. It's the same for civil society organization. But at the government level, they also have a role to invest resources in some of these critical care sectors. So everyone needs to play a role. This is not something that, we can leave to the government, we can leave to the CSOs, or we can leave to the community. Everyone has a role that they need to play. And when we do that collectively, we are able to achieve impact at scale. Consequently, we are able to achieve this gender equality that we've been chasing for so long. Yeah,
indeed. And, it takes a humane part of you to be able to take care of another human being. This sector that we are talking about is not like any other sector.
Correct.
It takes, not everybody can be a nurse, a teacher. Not everybody can just choose to stay at home and take care of the children. We have so many people who, they say they don't have that grace, that patience. So respecting and valuing care work and actually giving it the value that it deserves is something that we should be focusing on as a country, because you would imagine if all of us would decide that that is not the direction we want to go. Nobody is taking care of anyone. Let's all go this other direction. What would happen? It's a crisis that we will be facing as a society. I would imagine. Thank you so much for both of you ladies for creating time just to break this down for us. We began by asking, why do you want to be paid for doing what you're supposed to do? But I hope that wherever you are, now you know why it's important for us to begin shifting our mindset on how we look at this whole concept of care work. I've been having this sit down with Blandina Bobson. She's the Director of Programs at Oxfam Kenya. Thank you for your time once again. And we've also been having this sit down with Florence Machio. She's the Director Research and Data. It's under the Office of the Women Rights Advisor. Thank you for creating time for us as well. We really appreciate it. And this is a conversation we should keep having, not just on the day that we are marking the International Day of Care Support. Let's talk about it. But then the most important thing, let's begin by making the change right in our households. What is it that you can put your hands on? Please just roll your sleeves and do something. Clean the dishes, wash the clothes. Do something and help out. You never know what change this can actually bring in your whole environment. My name is Safina Chengoma. Thank you so much for creating time for Daybreak this morning. Keep watching Citizen TV. There's a lot that we still have lined up for you. But for now, it's a wrap. Have a lovely day ahead.